Out of the city and the city streets just for the moment, and then once we're out onto the main road leaving Glasgow, I'll put on a little bit more, or I'll give you a little bit more information. But for the moment, let's put on, as I say, just a little bit of music and we'll get ourselves out of the city. Because they are not typical words that we would use normally within the English language. And here in Scotland, the first language, the language that everybody speaks, is the English language. I am speaking English. It's with a Scottish accent, but I am speaking English. But there are some words that we use here in Scotland that are not English language words. For instance, the word loch, to say the water. And I also mentioned the word ben to describe a mountain. So what are these words and why do we use them? Well, to understand why we use these words, and others as well, is to understand this little island that you're all visiting. Some of you are living here at the moment. But this little island is called Britannia, or was called Britannia, by the Romans when the Romans were here 2,000 years ago. These days, of course, we refer to it as Britain, and Britain is made up today of Scotland, England and Wales. Scotland, England and Wales make up the island of Britain, and there is very much an element of a shared history that we have, particularly over the last 300 years once the United Kingdom was formed, the political union of the United Kingdom. But there is also a very, very different cultural past that we have as well. If you look here to Scotland, a lot of our cultural history goes back to the ancient Celtic people. If you look to England, particularly as you get further south in England, a lot of their heritage derives out from the Angles and the Saxons, who were an ancient Central European Germanic people, came across here in the 5th and 6th centuries. If you look to the likes of Wales, some of that heritage of Wales and the Welsh people derive out from the Druids, who were a deeply spiritual, deeply religious people. If you look to the islands, particularly the northern islands off the mainland of the island of Britain, if you look to the northern islands, a lot of their heritage is born out from the Vikings, or the Norsemen, as they were coming across in the 9th and 10th centuries. So it is just a small island, but there's a huge, huge cultural mix across here. And up here in Scotland, as I said, up here in Scotland we have this ancient people known as the Celtic people, and this is where we derive a lot of our cultural past from. In Scotland, there is no such thing as a lake in Scotland. Instead, what we have is we have a loch. It's spelled L-O-C-H, but it has to be said with that very raspy sound at the end of it. Loch Lomond. So again, this is the Lomond area, Loch Lomond. And there are many, many other words that we choose to use within the common English language, which are not actually English language words. But Ben Lomond, the mountain, Loch Lomond, the water, and there are many, many other examples of it as well. But it's all a way that we, as I say, we retain that cultural link back to the ancient people. This little bit of road is just a little bit narrower than some of the others, and we've got a driver in front of us that's making slow progress, but we are just another couple of minutes away from getting up to the first little stop.
Loch Ness였습니다. 대표님 여기 스코틀랜드 호수 보시니까 어떠세요?
아우 마음이 평온합니다. 시원하고.
강의 듣는 것보다 훨씬 낫죠?
아, 좋죠 뭐.
아니스 손 흔들어봐요. 하나 이게 훨씬 낫죠? 밖에
네?
나오니까.
Can be. No.
Nephew called William, who was Protestant. He was from, funnily enough, he was from the Netherlands, and William came across from the Netherlands in order to take the British throne at that point. Or it wasn't the British throne, it was the throne of Scotland and the throne of England. They were still two separate countries at that time. But William had come out in open rebellion against King William. And if you were a supporter of the exiled King James, the old king, his name was Jacobus in the Latin language. So the Highlands of Scotland were known as the Jacobites. They were the supporters of King James or King Jacobus. So they were in open rebellion, and the British Army, or the Royalist Army as it was to begin with, started to try and quell these various rebellions up here. And in the midst of all of this, there was a little story of two Highland brothers who were both Jacobite supporters, but they were arrested by the army, and they were arrested. They were taken to a military prison down in Carlisle, which is on the edges of the Scotland-England border, and there they were charged with treason because they were working against King William, who was by this time actually on the throne. So they were charged ever again. So this was the letter that became story, and the story that became song, and this is the song I'm now going to play for you. It's called Loch Lomond, but it's not really about the loch at all. It's really about these two Highland brothers, and one of them is just about to be executed.
Oh, by yon bonny banks, by yon bonny graves, the sun shines down on Loch Lomond. For me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of the Loch Lomond. He'll tag the high road, and I'll tag the low road. I'll be in Scotland, ahoy! But me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of the Loch Lomond. Was ever we parted in yon shady ground, the sweet, sweet sighs of Edlomond, on a deep purple hue, the highland hills we view, and the sun setting down in the gloaming. He'll tag the high road, and I'll tag the low road. I'll be in Scotland, ahoy! But he and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. Where the wee birdies sing, the wild flowers spring, and in sunshine the water lies sleeping, with a broken head, and we sing in spring, but in time he might be me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Ness. Oh, my young banks, my young bonny graves, the sun shines down on Loch Lomond. But me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. Heels at the high road, now at the low road. I'll be Scotland on Barney, but me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. Heels at the high road, now at the low road.
Also, we use some words here in Scotland in the common English language, common everyday language that are actually ancient words of these ancient Celtic peoples. So we do like to retain that cultural link. Now, there is another way with which we do it, and again we're back to the actual words and the actual language. The actual language of the ancient Celtic people is referred to as the Gaelic language. And the Gaelic language is still with us here in Scotland today. It's only by a very small percentage of the population that can speak the Gaelic language today, but they are there. And it is still very much alive. Now, when you're out on tour with me today, you will be able to experience a little bit of that ancient Gaelic language, the ancient language of the ancient Celtic people. And there are various ways with which you can experience it while you're here in Scotland. So for instance, if you look at all of the road signs up here in Highlands, Scotland, next road sign you see, it'll tell you, or it'll point you towards a little place, or might tell you so many miles to the next destination, or whatever it would be. But the sign will be in two languages. The first language of Scotland is, of course, the English language, and the English language is what the signs are all in. But also, you will see that the second language is the Gaelic language, and that is out there on all the road signs. There's one just coming up just shortly here. You see the green sign coming up, and it's pointing us towards a place called Dalria, and the English spelling and the Gaelic spelling of that particular word is out there. There's another little sign just coming up towards the little village that we're coming up to, which is called Tindrum, which I'll show you in a little bit more detail again. And in white lettering it says on it, welcome to Tindrum. In yellow lettering it says Fáilse go Tíondroma. That is the Gaelic language. Fáilse go Tíondroma, welcome to Tindrum. And as I say, there are the road signs all across the Highlands are all in this dual language, two languages of English and Gaelic. Some people out walking in the hills. You're getting a little bit wetter than we are. Hopefully we get a better run out of this one.
이 tres. 저만 써가지고.
If you are doing that, you might think, oh no, look at the weather, it's terrible, that's bad weather. One of the other things that we say in Scotland, and this is also true in some other countries as well, there is no such thing as bad weather. There is no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. So if you're prepared for the weather, then it's absolutely fine, which is why I was saying well done for bringing an umbrella when you're coming to Scotland, because that's always required. But if you're out walking and trekking across the land, as long as you've got the correct clothing on, the correct attire, then you should be good. And Scotland and the highlands of Scotland are very, very good for going walking, and there's a couple of reasons for it. Firstly, as we've seen already, since we leave the edges of Glasgow and the edges of the cities, the rest of Scotland is empty, and there is a huge opportunity to go and explore nature. But one of the other reasons is that there are no dangerous animals out here that's going to put your life under any kind of threat. So there are no bears, there's no wolves, there's no even things like wild hog, there's nothing like that out here in the wilds of Scotland. So you can go out walking and trekking safe in the knowledge that nothing is going to put your life under any kind of threat. But also there is no restriction about where you may or may not want to go. Much of the highlands of Scotland is actually private owned, private land. Much of it is. And huge big tracts of land owned by big landed estates and lad. Up here he is only the King of the Scots, king of the people, not of the land. So that is an example of the difference between the legal systems of Scotland and England, that this thing's called the right to roam. So as I say, get out walking and trekking in Scotland, and even if it's bad weather like it is at the moment, it might not be very pleasant. However, if you've got the right clothing on, then you'll be absolutely fine. So there are various ways of looking at these things. But we're going to stop again in just a few moments, just a few minutes. It's Gaelic, Buchallet of Moor, and it translates as the Great Shepherd. The Great Shepherd, and the Great Shepherd signals the point of entry into this area of Glencoe. As I say, it is looking a little bit wet, a little bit damp at the moment, but you'll maybe get a little sense of Glencoe as we come in here. And it is a very beautiful area. It is a very dramatic part of the Western Mountains. But it's also a little area where another little situation, another little story happened here, and again, like many of the other stories of Scotland, tragedy, sadness and death abound. And this story goes back to a similar period to what I was talking earlier on. During this period, it's called the Jacobite uprisings. So I mentioned the two brothers earlier on who were both Jacobites, which means that they supported the exiled King James. Well, many of the clans across Scotland, and the clans were the tribal people across Scotland, they also supported King James. But King William, who was the new Protestant king down in London, was determined to try and take control of the Highlands of Scotland. So he was going to take out some vengeance and make an example of one of the Highland clans in order to show the rest of the Highlands that he meant business. So down at that time, down here in the midst of this area of Glencoe, there was a very small subsection of the wider MacDonald clan, and the MacDonalds were down here. Now they were known cattle thieves, cattle rustlers and cattle lifters, as we knew them in Scotland, and King William was going to make an example of the MacDonalds, just to show the rest of the Highlands that he meant business. Now most of the Highland clans were in support of the exiled King James, but there was one clan that were very different, and their name was the Clan Campbell. The Clan Campbell were a very strategic people, very political. Every decision that they made was not based on tomorrow, wasn't based on next week, it was based on the long-term survival and the long-term benefit to the Clan Campbell. So it was always about the next generation and maintaining that family name and making it as powerful as you possibly could. And they looked at this situation, which was a power struggle between the old King James and the new King William of the Netherlands, and they decided that King William was in a much better position. So whether it was right, whether it was wrong, they didn't matter. They just wanted to be on the winning side, and they put the lot in behind King William and acted as the militia, the police if you like, up here in Highland Scotland. So the king was going to make an example of the MacDonalds, and the Campbells were going to be the ones to carry out the deed. So an order was given to Captain Robert Campbell to take 100 Campbell soldiers to come down into Glencoe and await my instruction. He said, await my instruction. So in early February of 1692, this all took place. The Campbell soldiers came down into Glencoe, and they came down to the MacDonalds asking for food and shelter for the men. Now the MacDonalds and the Campbells had a little bit of history between each other, so the MacDonalds were a little bit wary of what was going on here, thinking, oh, what's this all about? But Highland hospitality decrees that if you ask in a respectful manner, then your wish will be given and granted. And all they were asking for initially was food and shelter for the men. So the MacDonalds of Glencoe welcomed the Campbell soldiers into their homes, and for the next couple of weeks the Campbells slept in their beds, ate their meat, drank their whiskey and wine, and were generally being hosted by the MacDonalds. Now we're just about to go by, I'm just going to cut off from the story just for a second, we're just about to go by quite a nice little waterfall area. The Tears of the MacDonalds refers to this little situation that I've been describing. So the Campbells are down in can see even the low-lying ground. We've had a lot of rain over the last little while. There was quite a dry spell that we had moving out of August and into September. There was quite a dry spell that we had, but yeah, it looks like it was saving it all up for October. What we're actually getting at the moment is
글렌코에 왔습니다. 고마워요. 우산 필요하네. 여기서 찍어야겠다. 응. 멀리 가지 말고. 자. 준현님. 자. 하나, 둘, 셋.
totally annihilated them, but it was all on the orders of the king. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on another little song here as we make our way out of the bottom end of the glen, sorry. And this is about the massacre of Glencoe that happened back here in 1692.
Cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel was the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of Donnell. They came in a blizzard, we offered them heat, a roof for their heads, dry shoes for their feet. We wined them and dined them, they ate all our meat, and they slept in the house of MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel is the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald. They came from Fort William with murder in mind. The Campbell had orders, King William had signed. They taught to the sword these words underlined, and leave none alive called MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel is the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald. They came in the night when the men were asleep. This band of Argyles through snow soft and deep, like murdering foxes among helpless sheep. They slaughtered the house of MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel is the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald. Some died in their beds at the hand of the foe. Some fled in the night, were lost in the snow. Some lived to accuse him, was struck the first blow, but gone was the house of MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel is the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald. Oh, cruel is the snow that sweeps Glencoe and covers the grave O'Donnell. And cruel is the foe that raped Glencoe and murdered the house of MacDonald.
a seawater loch, because we are actually out towards the western coastal road, and you'll see as we come round the corner here, we're just about to go into a bridge which is going to take us over the water. The water is called Loch Leven, so it is still called a loch. But if you look out towards the left-hand side of us, you can see that the water is getting ever more expansive. This is called the Bay of Ballachulish, and the Bay of Ballachulish is an inlet from the Atlantic Ocean, and this is therefore saltwater seawater, and we are on the coastal road at the moment. Celtic Scotland, certainly over the last few centuries, and the bagpipes are an instrument that can make very beautiful music, very rousing, beautiful music. It can make some quite awful music as well, it has to be said. It can make some really terrible music if you're not playing the bagpipes correctly, or if you're learning to play the bagpipes. The sound can be really quite bad, it really can be. But played correctly, they can make a very beautiful sound. So what I'll do is I'll put on a little tune here, and this is the sound of the bagpipes. today make this the soundtrack to their wedding. So you see here the little town of Fort William, and as I said earlier, we're not able to get into Fort William. It's all pedestrianised in the middle of it, which is why we're kind of scooting around the outside of it here. But you only really see the backs of the buildings properly. But it's right on the edges of the water, and it is a nice little town. It is a nice little town, but we don't get to see the inside of it. It's all pedestrianised. The only thing that's left of the old fortress that it lent its name to was just on the side here. You see the old seawall just on the side, and this is the last remnants of the old fortress that was built here all those many years ago. Now the train journey in particular is very popular, especially with fans of a particular movie series that was on a few years ago. Some of you may have seen Harry Potter and the various different movies of Harry Potter. Of course, it started as a series of books, Well, if you have seen any Harry Potter, the train that leaves Fort William and goes out to a little fishing village called Mallaig, it's about 35 miles or so out towards the west, is the train line where they did some of the filming for the Hogwarts Express. If you have seen the movie, you might remember the views of the train going over a big viaduct bridge. It's called Glenfinnan Viaduct, and the line from Fort William out to Mallaig, this is where the big viaduct bridge is. And during the summer months, it's just about ended now as we move into October, but during the summer months from the Easter through to the end of September, the train that takes you out there is a big old steam engine called the Jacobite steam train, and that is the train that they used when they were doing the filming for Harry Potter all those many years ago now. So it is very, very popular. It's a beautiful train journey, but to some people it's a little bit of movie magic as well as you're riding the Hogwarts Express. If you look up to the right hand side of us, you'll see some of the mountains up here, which are known as the Nevis range of mountains, and the Nevis range of mountains are the highest range here in Scotland and indeed across Britain. Now, we're not going to see the top of them today because of the low-lying cloud and the mist and the rain, but this is another popular reason for coming to Fort William if you want to go out walking and actually do a little bit of climbing and things as well, so it's very, very popular. But as I say, we are going to make a little stop in just a few minutes time, and to take us out there I'm going to put on a little bit more. canal bridge in front of us. And up and down the canal, the Caledonian Canal Centre on the left-hand side here has a little cafe at the back. So we crossed over the bridge of the canal. This is the natural river. If anybody needs to get any cash out, there is an ATM machine.
아니 저 이제 문을 열어주면 통과하는 거예요. 저기 한번 보세요. 손.
of Loch Ness in the Great Glen of Scotland. But please don't feed the monsters.
In the top deck, you all hear me? You all understand me? You need whiskey? Of course you do. So, 3 right answers gives you an explanation. I'm going to be your tour guide today, guys and girls. My name's Ricky. Just give me a shout if you have any questions during the trip. At the hill here, we've got Dan. Downstairs in the bar, we have Charlie and John. So, any one of us are approachable if you have any questions, etc. You need any written translations, they are available on the lower deck. We have them in French, Spanish, German, Italian, Chinese, Mandarin, Finland, and drink whiskey. If you're drinking that whiskey, something in your language will appear about here. Okay? Just don't drink too much because you don't want to be jumping monster. You just want to see. Okay? We're going to head across.
100 million years ago, the continents of North America and Europe collided, and this created an enormous mountain chain. Those mountains are known as the Caledonians. 20 million years later, the Great...
Fed for Augustus for 2 weeks after that with sushi left for the weekend, so quite a good fish. The other ones you get in Loch Ness are obviously trout. Everybody knows them, don't you? They're brown, they're trout, and that's about as exciting as they get until you cook them. Then they're rather tasty. The smaller they are, the more tastier they are, so remember that if you're fishing for them. We've also got rainbow trout and sea trout. However, we've got another trout in Loch Ness, and it's these guys. Anybody recognise those? It's a trout, yeah. What they're called is ferox trout. Ferox trout are very large, cannibalistic.
and the trees are sweetly blue, and the wild mountain tide rolls around the river. Where you go, I stay there, and the the waves crashing and the tide pulls out. It's an angry sea, but there is no doubt that the lighthouse will keep shining out to warn the lonely sailor. The lightning strikes and the wind comes cold through the sailor's bones to the sailor's soul, till there's nothing left that he can hold except the rolling ocean. And I am ready for the storm. Yes, sir, ready. I am ready for the storm. Ready for the storm.
Separates, Highland and Lowland Scotland is actually just north of Aberdeen. But here we go, this is the little town of Inverness. We just crossed over the canal there, and we've crisscrossed over the canal a few times today. If you remember, our first encounter with the canal was not a pleasant one because we got stopped at the bridge with literally seconds to spare, but we've crisscrossed over the canal a few times today. We have now crisscrossed over it for the final time today, and it signalled the entry point into this little city of Inverness. And we'll make our way down towards the centre. As I say, we're going to make a little stop down by the centre, down by the river. But it's also very, very popular. Lots of hotels and lots of people coming up and enjoying this part. But you've got the original Catholic Church, of course, and then in the 1500s kind of split into the Presbyterian Protestant Church. You've then got the Episcopalian and various different branches of the Christian faith, but of course lots of other religions around. But you see a lot of the spires are born out from this period. It's also got a cathedral, and the cathedral was built just a couple of hundred years ago. As we're doing here, and we're going to make our way through and over to the far side of the town. And that's the main kind of shopping area. There's also lots of bars and restaurants around there as well. And as I say, a really, really nice little place.